Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam, Trailokyam Sacharacharam, Tatpadam Darshitam Yena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Chapita, Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha, Tvameva Vidya Dravinam, Tvameva Sarvam Namadeva Deva, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So last week we had a brief introduction to the doctrine of what we call the gunas, or the qualities. And in the Sankhya philosophy, the idea is these three gunas, tamas, rajas, and sattva, when they're in perfect equilibrium, there's no manifestation of a creation. When they move out of equilibrium, the Jagat appears. That may be true, that may not be true, I don't know. But more importantly, as above, so below, we as individuals, our minds move through the three gunas. So inactivity, tamas, dullness, covering, illusion, delusion. Rajas, activity, where all our problems are. Sattva, non-activity, clarity. It's in the sattvic mind that our self-nature is clearly apprehended by the intellect. We're happy, we're content, we're peaceful. And in this teaching, there's a great, great key. Krishna says, "O Arjuna, be you ever beyond the gunas, vigunaihi." Meaning, ever take on the sakshi bhava, the attitude of the witness. You watch the mind play ever in front of you. The way to heal the mind is to get out of the mind. Let me repeat that. The way to heal the mind is to get out of the mind. And then he says, the result of this is your mind will naturally start to move into sattva. So he says, ever remain in the sattvic condition. where you're happy. All right. We're now on 48. Is that correct, Deepa?
Yes.
Number 48, please.
योगस्थः कुरु कर्माणि संगत्यक्त्वा धनञ्जय सिद्ध्यत् सिद्ध्यो समो भूत्वा समत्वं योग उच्यते. Perform action, O Dhananjaya, abandoning attachment, being steadfast in yoga, and balanced in success and failure. Evenness of mind is called yoga.
So this evenness of mind, this equanimity of mind, is what he's calling yoga. So he's going to again and again introduce us to what we call the dvandvas, the pairs of opposites. And they're usually like heat and cold, pleasure and suffering, honor and dishonor, or success and failure. Physical, pair of opposites, emotional, and intellectual. So again, we're supposed to practice this witnessing, this sakshi bhava, this attitude of the witness, and practice having this equanimity of mind. Whatever's going on, it's temporary. It will pass. Always. One of the things the yogi learns is we do not need to be impelled into action because of an emotional state. If I'm angry, I don't have to yell at somebody or hurt them. If I'm frightened, I don't have to run. We learn, there's a feeling. Ugh. You just shake, rock, and roll. Be present to the feeling. It's not, we do not have to act on it. Acting on it is an attempt to get away from the feeling, is what it is. But it's just a feeling. In truth, it cannot touch me. And it will pass. It will pass. And of course, success and failure are just evaluations that the intellect makes, or what other people tell us. So let this information just pass through. Shankara uses the metaphor of like water moving through a wicker basket. Just let it all pass through. Let it all pass through. Or a modern day example of like when you take your pasta, you hold out the colander and you pour the water with the pasta into it, and the water just passes through. Just let positive things, negative things. How do we do that? Because none of it applies to the self, to me. I'm not good. I'm not bad. I'm not smart. I'm not stupid. Aham Brahmasmi. I am that partless Brahman, the ground of being. So working on this meditation in action. So if we react, we don't react to our reaction. And we begin to not take things so seriously. Swami Tejamayananda used to say, the foolish person doesn't take life seriously. The intelligent person takes life seriously. But the wise person seriously doesn't take life seriously. Why? Because it's all mithya. It's all just illusion. It's all anitya. It's temporary. It's transient. It's impermanent. Any thoughts on this? Next one.
Just a sec, bringing it up. दुरेण ह्यवरं कर्मं बुद्धियोगा धनञ्जय बुद्धो शरणमन्विच्छ कृपणाः फलहेतवः. Far lower than the yoga of wisdom is action, O Dhananjaya. Seek thou refuge in wisdom. Wretched are they whose motive is the fruit.
So, if you are acting in the world and your goal is the fruits of your actions, the reason I'm working is to get what I want. Now, this is subtle. We all have preferences. Preferences in and of themselves are not problematic. But when there's a quality of insistence, I must have it this way in order to be happy. When there's a quality of compulsion, I must do this. Acting in that way leads us to suffering. So here, Lord Krishna is saying, let go of the fruits. We act in the world according to our prarabdha, our force of our past, according to our prakriti, our nature. And sometimes it's successful, sometimes it's not. But we let go of our attachment to the outcome, the fruit of the action. Next one.
Sorry, I'm not as quick as usual today. Buddhi yukto jahatiha ubhe sukrita dushkrite tasmad yogaya yujyasva yogaha karmasu kaushalam. Endowed with the wisdom of evenness of mind, one casts off in this life both good deeds and evil deeds. Therefore, devote yourself to yoga. Skill in action is yoga.
Yes. So there's a sequence of behaviors, of practices. In the beginning, we want to work on replacing the negative vasanas with positive vasanas. We want to work on abstaining from destructive behavior and replace it with positive behavior. So, for example, let's say you have a habit of lying. One of the things a yogi wants to cultivate is satyam, truthfulness. So you work on it. You catch yourself. When you tell a fib, you go, oh, I just lied. I'm sorry. The truth is blah, 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 blah. Or let's say you gossip. Have a terrible habit of gossiping. So you work on it. If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. At best, don't talk about people who aren't in the room. So we have these personal habits. Maybe you have a habit of regretting the past. No, I'm not going to go down that road. I'm going to stay in the now. Or fearing the future. Bring your mind back. So it can be subtle as well as gross. But in the beginning, it's replacing the negative, downward-looking behaviors and thoughts with positive. We cultivate subhaj, auspicious wishes, auspicious desires. One of which, of course, is the desire to attain self-realization or mumokshutva. But here, Krishna is saying, when we've stepped back and we've gotten out of the mind, then we cast off not only the negative tendencies, but even the positive tendencies. So let me see if I can give an example. So let's say your idea of yourself is, I'm worthless, I'm unlovable, I'm ugly. So what you do is you get rid of those negative notions of identity with positive ones. No, I'm a worthwhile person. I may have some wounds from childhood, but that doesn't mean I'm not a worthwhile person worthy of love. I have gifts, I have talents. So we're replacing the negative with the positive. But then, when the mind is a little calmer, now wait a minute, self in me is neither worthless nor worthwhile. I'm the space of consciousness. I'm neither successful nor a failure. I'm the space of consciousness. So we get out of any notion of self and stay identified with that ground of being, that pure awareness. That pure awareness. Any thoughts about this sequence of practice?
Hey, Jim.
Sure, yeah, go for it. One person at a time.
I'll go second.
First person.
Hi, Jim. This is Shyam. So I have a question on the latest commentary. So you mentioned that, like, if you make a conscious attempt to replace your negative tendencies with your positive tendencies, isn't there a sense of attachment with the outcome? Because you want to, achieve a desirable outcome, like you want to be on the path of self-realization. So isn't there an attachment to the outcome in that?
Well, give me an alternative. What say if you're just an asshole in life? What are you supposed to do? Just say, it's okay for me to be an asshole, it's not real? That doesn't sound like a very effective practice.
No, but a foolish person can still be content with life. Like there's this myth of Sisyphus, Greek character who used to roll a stone up a hill all day, only to release it at the top of the hill. And he used to derive some absurd pleasure from that activity. So I mean, you can be
Did
content
you
with
make
what.
that up, or you actually knew someone who did that?
No, there's the myth of Sisyphus, a Greek character.
There's a what character?
Greek mythology.
Oh yes, Sisyphus. Yes, but that's a myth. Let's talk about what's real. What's your life and my life. So if you've got what we don't want to get caught up in is what I call the Vedanta logic loop. The Vedanta logic loop is a way of rationalizing our suffering, which is frequently the result of our bad thinking and bad behavior. And only a healthy ego can die. Ram Dass used to say, you got to be somebody before you're nobody. So if a person is caught up in a very negative view of the world, a very negative way of being in the world, they have a lot of negative vasanas. It's impractical to think that this person is going to be able to practice effective self-inquiry. Instead, we fight against our lower tendencies with these higher thoughts. These are what in Raja Yoga we would call the yamas and the niyamas. What are the yamas and the niyamas? The do's and the don'ts of life. Now, this is very, very elementary practice. Very elementary practice. Please understand this. But if you are a liar, a cheat, and a thief, you need to clean a lot of that stuff up before you can begin to practice the higher notions of meditation. Let's say you've lived a life where you've hurt a lot of people. Chances are you have a lot of amends to make before you start really getting into the higher practices of yoga. So yes, at that point, what we want to do is aspire to the highest. So remember, the mind has to be attached to something. It's its nature. What is yoga? Yoga means the mind is attached to the self. That's where it comes home. But we can't go from A to Z. There's a process in there for most of us. So, for example, on Thursday night, we're studying Tripura Rahasya. And in that text, Parashurama is filled with negative vasanas. His parents were killed, so he goes on a rampage, killing people and collecting their blood to propitiate his ancestors. And he keeps killing and killing and killing out of vengeance, but it doesn't satisfy his heart. So Dattatreya says, you go worship the mother. He initiates him into Sri Vidya practice. Worship the mother. Parashurama worships the mother for 12 years before he's calmed down enough to begin to say, what did the sage Samvarta say to me? I don't think I understand it. Maybe Dattatreya can explain it to me. So he's finally subtle enough. When he comes back to Dattatreya, Dattatreya says, aha, now he's calmed down a bit. Now he's ready for the highest knowledge. So can you see the sequence of practice there? Yes?
Yes.
Yes, very good question. We have to understand where we are. Now, Gita teaches for people at all levels. It's a universal scripture. So it's also for the person who's all caught up in all sorts of difficult times. And our negativity may not be that we're a jerk. Our negativity may be we're caught up in fear. We're caught up in a sense that the world is gloom and doom. We may be just totally fed up with the politics of the age. Or we may have lost a loved one and we can't let go of our grief. Or we may have had an unfortunate love affair. We've got this thorn inside about how could that person have hurt me so badly. These are real things that people go through. And frequently we need to heal these things before we're ready for the deeper flights of yoga. So the idea is we replace the negative thinking, the negative behavior, the negative vasanas is what they are, with auspicious vasanas first. Then when we've obtained some sattva, then we can go into the deeper flights of meditation. Excellent, excellent question. Those of you out there who come from a Christian background, the same principle occurs in the deep contemplative traditions. There's a story in the Christian New Testament about Jesus coming to the home of Mary and Martha. They were sisters. And in the story, Mary is sitting at Jesus's feet, just lost in samadhi, loving him. Martha's in the kitchen cooking. I always have the feeling as she comes out and she's got flour all over her hair and it's kind of sticking out. And she says, Jesus, tell Mary to come into the kitchen to help prepare the food to feed everybody. And Jesus says, Martha, Martha, you're concerned for what you need not be concerned about. Mary has the better part. And this has always been traditionally interpreted that Martha is what we call the active life, karma yoga, bhakti yoga, moral development. And then that matures into Mary, which is the deep life of self-inquiry. So it's sequential. It's sequential. A lot of people don't understand this. And then they wonder why, as much as they've read and how many Upanishads they've studied, they're still out there and they're afflicted by their negative vasanas. All right. I got a little bit sidetracked here. Deepa, would you read the English of that verse one more time for me?
Yes, Jim, there was also a second question that I think Katie had.
Oh, yes, please. Other question.
That you covered my question. My question was about or you covered it in terms of healing the vasanas to more auspicious ones. And I was wondering if, I guess I've always conceptualized that as coddling or enabling the human condition, but it helped me when you said it's the sort of essence of being human that we need to heal it first before we can go to deeper.
For many of us, not everybody, not everybody. But Carl Jung used to say only a healthy ego can die. And Ram Dass said you've got to be somebody before you're nobody. Sometimes, if in meditation, all of a sudden what pops up is, let's say you were sexually assaulted by a family member at a very young age. And the prudent thing may be to go into some trauma therapy for a while. Well, that's not very Vedantic. All of that is unreal. Yeah, tell that to your body as it reacts. You know, sometimes we need to go through this kind of stuff.
Nice. Thanks, Jim. Thanks.
Or what I face all the time. Many of you know that I'm an alcoholic in recovery. I've got 34 years clean and sober. Been doing this a long time. And when people come into recovery, frequently they've lived lives of criminality. There's no question about it. You know, they've stolen from their mother to buy drugs. They're cheating on their spouses. You know, they shoplift on a regular basis because they haven't got any money. And all this behavior has to stop. And we always say in the rooms of AA, you know what happens when you sober up a drunken horse thief? You get a horse thief. You know, so there's a lot of work that needs to be done on our character frequently. Very, very good questions tonight. All right, next one, please, Deepa.
कर्मजं बुद्धियुक्ता हि फलं त्यक्त्वा मनीषिणः जन्मबन्धविनिर्मुक्ता padam gacchantyanamyam. The wise, possessed of knowledge, having abandoned the fruits of their actions, freed from the fetters of birth, go to the state which is beyond all evil.
So we have here one of the most important ideas in Hindu literature. One of the ideas is self-realization, enlightenment, moksha, liberation, does not bestow freedom from death. It bestows freedom from birth. But you have to understand, certain is death for the born, and certain is birth for the dead. That's the cycle of samsara. But I love what Deepak Chopra says. He says, the opposite of death is not life. The opposite of death is birth. There is no opposite to life, because you are birthless, changeless, deathless. You are outside of the cycle of birth and death. So what really happens, listen very carefully, when knowledge dawns on the mind, the jnani, the person of wisdom, realizes, oh, I was never born in the first place. It's like if you were dreaming, you were in a cage, and inside the dream, your goal was to get out of the cage. And then you wake up. What you see is you were never in the cage in the first place. So we see that this sense that I am a person struggling through a miserable life, and I am born and I die and I am born again. The person of wisdom comes to realize, oh, wait a minute, that's all just been a very long, very vivid dream. Now, the cause for reincarnation is this: the body is a vehicle for the satisfaction of desire. When the woman or the man of wisdom realizes what I'm looking for is who I am, all that desire falls away. And the cause for rebirth is gone. Does that mean I just poof, disappear? When have you ever ceased to be? Nothing happens to you. That's difficult to understand. Just put it on the shelf for now. Next verse.
Yada te moha kalilam buddhivyartitarishyati tada gantasi nirvedam shrotavyasya shrutasya cha. When your intellect crosses beyond the mire of delusion, then you shall attain to indifference as to what has been heard and what is yet to be heard.
Oh, I love this verse. So many of us think that knowledge is something that I'm going to figure out. And I know many people get frustrated because they perceive that my teaching at times is inconsistent. And I have to tell you, I make no claim to consistency. Because in the end, it's not figure outable. So Krishna says when that mind just kind of stops all its struggling, and whatever data comes in, even inconsistent data, no big deal. The mind itself is unreal. What is real? Aham, I alone, is real. So the person of wisdom has no need to argue truth with anybody. Because if you can say it, it's not truth. Words do not go there. Yet it is absolutely knowable, not by the mind. How do you know you are you? You do not see, hear, taste, touch, or smell yourself. You don't emote yourself. You don't think yourself. Yet you know you are. How do you know it? I is its own means of knowledge. It's Swayambhu. That is beyond the mind. Next one.
Shruti vipratipannate yada sthayasti nischala samadhavachala buddhis tada yogamavapsyasi. When your intellect, though perplexed by what you have heard, shall stand immovable and steady in the self, then you shall attain self-realization.
So here what he's saying is the yogi learns to not believe her mind. Even if what you hear doesn't make sense. You have the capacity just to drop it. Truth is achintyam, it's unthinkable. Avyapadesham, beyond explanation, beyond words, untalkaboutable. And when the demon Yebat, I may not have shared with you this demon, this terrible demon that gets in our way. Its name is Yebat. And it says, yeah, but what about this? Yeah, but what about that? Yeah, but what about that? Silence the demon Yebat. Om Namah Shivaya. Next one.
Arjunavacha Sthita pragyasya ka bhasha samadhisthasya keshava sthitadhiki prabhasheta kimasita vrajeta kim. What, O Keshava, is the description of him who has steady wisdom and who is merged in the superconscious state? How does one of steady wisdom speak? How does he sit? How does he walk?
So this is the 54th verse. And from here to the end, the 72nd verse of the chapter, these 18 verses constitute what is known as the Sthita Prajna Purusha section of the second chapters. Very, very famous. Sthita Prajna. Sthita from sta, tishtati, that which is stands, which is still, which is steady. It's where we get the English word stand, stable. Prajna means wisdom. What is this person who's immersed in samadhi? Here, Swamiji translated as the superconscious state. How do they walk? How do they talk? How do they sit? Can you tell a Muni by seeing them? Now, as we enter into the remaining 17 verses here, what they are not for is for us to compare other people. Deeper woman is steady wisdom. Oh, not true. No. We don't measure other people. It is for us to check out our own progress. Now, these qualities appear spontaneously in the woman or the man of wisdom, but you and I can cultivate them. They are invitations to practice, as well as a description of what is a saint. Is it someone who can fly through the air? Is it someone who can teleport? Is it someone who's lived 400 years? Is it someone who can sleep on a bed of nails? Let's see what the marks of a person of wisdom are. Sthita Prajna Purusha, a person of steady wisdom. 55. This, by the way, is my favorite verse in the whole Gita, this next one.
54 or 55? Which one, Jim?
We just did 54, didn't we?
No, which one is your favorite verse?
55.
Shri Bhagwan Vacha Prajahati Yada Kaman Sarvan Partha Manogatan Atmanyevatmana Tushta Sita Pragyastadochyate. When a man completely casts off, O Partha, all the desires of the mind and is satisfied in the self by the self, then he is said to be the one of steady wisdom.
So this to me is the clearest definition of what a saint is. This is the clearest definition of the culmination of our yoga. This is the clearest definition of what enlightenment, self-realization is. So first, when a person casts off all the desires of the mind, they're like just dross, insignificant. They mean nothing. Well, this yoga's cheap, Jim. I do that every night in deep sleep. That's the first part. The absolute renunciation of attachment, casting off all the desires of the mind, and is satisfied in the self by the self. So the primary mark of a person of steady wisdom is they have retired into the self. They have what we call Atmaramana. They revel in the self. This is a person of steady wisdom. Not one who can read minds or bring airports out of the air or fly through the air. But a person who's cast off all the desires of the mind and is satisfied in the self by the self. This is steady wisdom. "56.
Dukkheshvanudvignamanaha Sukheshu Vigataspraha Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha Sthitadhi Muniruchyate. He whose mind is not shaken up by adversity, and who in prosperity does not hanker after pleasures, who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady wisdom.
So moving backwards, here he uses the word muni. Muni is usually translated as a sage, but Muni comes from the same root as Maunam. Maunam means silence. So when you tune into the mind of the person of steady wisdom, it's silent. Shunyata, empty. Now, let's take these qualities at the beginning part of the verse and look at each one. So read the first idea for me again, please, Deepa.
Sure. He whose mind is not shaken up by adversity.
Aha. So, physical problems get as far as my body. Suffering only gets as far as my mind. Doubt and confusion only get as far as my intellect. But none of it touches me. Make friends with that center of your being, that witnessing consciousness, that ground of being, that awareness that's never shaken by anything. Next idea.
And who in prosperity does not hanker after pleasures.
So, yoga is not about hitting all the green lights of life. So, when good things happen, enjoy. Yoga never says not to enjoy. Yoga says don't be attached. So, if good things come, the fool says, that was wonderful, more. Yogi, trinkets and baubles. Trinkets and baubles. His mind never extroverts because of it. Next idea.
Who is free from attachment, fear, and anger.
So he's free from this grasping, this clutching at life, attachment. The result of attachment is fear. Fear I'm not going to get what I want, or fear I'm going to lose what I have. So the yogi of perfect detachment becomes fearless. And anger. What is krodha? What is anger? Here is the Vedantic definition of anger. Anger is thwarted desire, unmet expectation. When I'm not getting what I want, I get pissed off. When people aren't meeting my expectations, I get pissed off. That's all there is to anger. The fool then beats on the world or beats on other people. The yogi lets go of their attachment and therefore is free from fear and anger. I think we've got all the pieces of that verse. Is there one more idea that we've missed?
No, it just ends with is called a sage of steady wisdom.
The Muni, the Sthita Pragyam Muni, the sage, the quiet one, the silent one. It's nothing more obnoxious than a person who's practicing Maunam, carrying this, little chalkboard they write on sometimes, or a pad, and they're just obnoxious. They're talking with everybody, asking, I want this, I want that, I want this. They're communicating like crazy. And you might as well open your damn mouth and talk. That's not Maunam. Maunam happens here. Next one.
Verse 57. Yasarvatrana bhisneha tat prapya shubham nabhinandati na dveshti tasya pragya pratisthitaha. He who is everywhere without attachment, on meeting with anything good or bad, who neither rejoices nor hates, his wisdom is fixed.
So this person has fixed wisdom when no matter what comes, he or she doesn't rush after the world, nor do they avoid the world. I call it, you just put the body on automatic pilot. Let the robot do its thing. Let the body fulfill its prarabdha, its duty, its lot in life. But you get out. And sometimes Swamiji would then bellow, shut up and get out. And people, if they didn't know him, would think, oh, I have to leave the satsang hall. But no, shut up. Silence the mind. Get out. Live outside of the body, mind, and be ever the witness of it. This is the person of steady wisdom. That was 58 or 57?
It was 57, Jim.
57. All right. So we'll stop here and we'll start up with 58 next week. And we have time now for questions.
If no one else is going, I have a question.
Please.
And this is from personal experience. There was a time in my life where I used to think that nothing really is important. And it's all temporary, it's ephemeral, it's temporal, and it all goes away. And hence nothing is important. But I also distinctly remember that it's very hard to motivate yourself to do anything then. It's kind of like a beat, nihilistic. I mean, it could tend to nihilism. I don't know. It's very difficult to motivate yourself if everything is viewed, in that impermanent way.
Well, it's an excellent question. Did you all understand Deepa's question? And what we have to be honest with ourselves about is that a tamasic kind of depression? Is it the result of disappointment and feeling shut down and nothing matters? Or oftentimes it's the result of, I've let go of a tremendous amount of attachment and all I have left is a whole boatload full of aversions. Then the world is annoying and frustrating and depressing. But for example, it's hard to tell. It may be a very high state. So we have two scriptures that talk about this state. The one is Buddhist, so we won't talk about that. But we'll talk about Yoga Vasishta, which is part of our canon of scriptures. So in the beginning, Lord Rama leaves the palace and he goes out and he experiences the world as a teenager. And he sees the stupidity, the vanity, the vapidity of it all. And he comes back to the palace. And he won't do the rituals he's supposed to do. He doesn't dress properly. He sleeps in. He's in exactly the nihilistic state that you're talking about. What's the point of doing anything? Now, I think it's Vishwamitra who comes to the court, and that he's been trying to do ritual out in the forest, and a demon keeps bothering him. And Ram's father is about ready to say, kid, go out and kill the demon. And Ram's, like, why should I bother to do anything? And they're worried about him. But Vasishta, the court sage, says, no. He has mature vairagya. He's now ripe for realization. And then the whole rest of Yoga Vasishta is about the enlightenment of Lord Ram. But that kind of mature dispassion and the tamasic depression can look similar. Takes a discerning mind to be able to understand the difference. Now, the fact of your life, Deepa, is at this point, you seem to be pretty keen on sadhana. Am I wrong?
No.
So obviously this ennui has impelled you where it's supposed to.
So you're saying,
what do you, go ahead.
so you're saying in that nihilism are the seeds of the seeker attitude.
Absolutely. Unless it's the kind of nihilism that life doesn't matter. I think I'll just kill myself or start shooting heroin. Then that, because they can look the same from the outside. One is tamasic, one is sattvic. But will you ever be able to fall in love and romance will be the heart of your life? Probably not. Will you ever just be so excited this is the greatest career in the world? Probably not. But what will you get? You'll see yourself in all beings. You'll be clear as to your duty in the now. Life will be rich and full because of the intensity of God consciousness. But will the world, with its name and forms, be able to call you with its siren call? Trinkets and baubles. It's all that's out there. It's not bad. It's just empty. So what does the yogi do? Well, be useful. Live a life of seva. As we get into chapters 3, 4, and 5, mostly it's in chapter 4, Krishna will talk about living your life in the yajna spirit. Live a life of service. Then at least you're useful. Excellent question. Do you have a copy of that book, The Essence of Yoga Vasishta?
No, but I can get it. I'll ask Puneet about it.
Actually, you can't. Well, Puneet has them, yes, but he was able to acquire 30 of them.
Nice.
But I would recommend that you read that very first part, and I think you'll see yourself in there.
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
Very good question. Will I be able to give you back the world with all and for to have joys and thrills for you again? No, I'm sorry. You know too much. That's like a person who's been driving a Maserati saying, yeah, but I want to go back and ride my tricycle. This is too little. But what happens is, for example, you'll be at work and you'll see all your colleagues being motivated by ambition and advancement and stuff like that. Not that you shouldn't do well at work, but you know what it's like when you can see their motivations and like there's something that just died inside. I can't work it up like that anymore. Or somebody else talking about the stock market. Oh my God, the stock market. My Tesla stock has just gone bananas. Blah, 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 blah. You know, I'm very happy for you. Oh, I met this boy. Oh, ah. And you go, mm-hmm. I wonder if he'll pick up his socks, you know. Am I making sense?
Yeah. Thank you, Jim.
Any other questions? One of the things we have to watch out for is what I call sour grapes renunciation. You all know the Aesop's fables of the fox who sees these grapes hanging from a grape arbor, and he wants the grapes, and he keeps jumping up for the grapes, and he can't reach them, and he can't reach them. Finally, he gives up, and as he's walking away, he says, they were probably sour anyway. So we have to make sure that our distaste for the world is not because we felt like a failure, because the desire is still there. We've just been horribly disappointed. Now, if you have insight, you can see the impermanence of it all, the limitation of it all. But that's a bit different than what I call sour grapes renunciation. Any other questions? All right, let's meditate. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya purnameva vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Om Tat Sat. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. Much
You're
appreciated.
welcome. You have a good evening, okay?
Thank you. You too.
Thanks, Jim. Bye.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.